Yeah, so
I don't want you to get wet.
no, you're right.
Not really.
So I think it, in my view, as far as I'm aware, the coin, if it says it's legal tender, then you can spend it. However, what they said about Tesco's reserving the right to accept whatever payment they want to accept would be correct as well. So yes, they technically wouldn't have to accept the coin if they didn't want to. They could ask you for alternative means of payment. Is that a bilking? I would suggest not, because you've offered a means of payment. So it's not really a bilking. I would suggest that is more of a civil dispute between you and Tesco.
I think that's the right answer. But also, your point originally about they don't have to accept the coin. I think that's for normal transactions, for a transaction's taken place. So, like, you know, if you went into the main store and you had a shopping trolley full of stuff,
Yeah.
and then you offered, say, Scottish notes, they don't have to accept them if they don't want to. They're not legal tender in the UK.
Yeah.
They do in fact accept them, which is what annoys me even more about it. So what they don't have to accept, they do accept, and what they do have to accept, they don't.
I think it's down to the retailer as to what they want to accept, isn't it? Because some will accept cheques, for instance,
Yeah.
and others won't accept cheques. And at the moment, a lot of people are saying we'll only accept card payments, we won't accept cash. So I think it is down to the retailer there.
Before
as
the
to what
transaction's taken place, yeah?
Well,
That's where the difference is, see.
yeah,
When the
and
transaction...
that's what I'm saying. It would come down to either a civil dispute or case law.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that, you know, we've never dealt with and probably won't see again, because those coins are incredibly rare. And many people would use them as more of a collection than they would as, I'm going to go to the shop and spend my £100 coin.
Yeah.
So
They're not that rare, but there are millions of pounds worth of them in circulation. A lot of people felt cheated that they were sold them by the Royal Mint as £100 for £100. And then when it came to actually try and use them, it's impossible. I mean, I went to court with him, and on the Royal Mint's website, they say that that these can be paid into court, yeah, and legal tendering paid into court.
and then the court wouldn't accept it.
Yeah, court hasn't got a cash office, right? If you want to pay a fine by cash, you get like a gyro slip and you have to pay it into the post office, and the post office won't accept them. So in other words, there's no way you can actually use these coins.
I think you've therefore got a dispute with the Royal Mint as well.
Yeah,
I think the police thing is separate. I would suggest that maybe if you wanted to pursue that, that would be about the way that you were dealt with regards to, you know, is it a crime, isn't it a crime? In my view, and I'm not CPS charging standards, I'm also road policing, I don't deal with this sort of stuff. But from my experience, I would have been loath to have crimed that, because in my view, I don't see that a crime has been committed because you've offered payment. The fact that Tesco's have said we're not going to accept that payment, to me, you've still offered it. And that then becomes a civil dispute. And if I'd have gone to that job, personally, I would have said, well, actually, no, I'm not going to deal with this as a bilking, because this chap's offered payment with a legal tender. You know, the fact that you've decided not to accept that payment isn't my problem. I don't see that there's a crime being committed. So I think that that would be your complaint against the police, would be that really, has a crime ever been committed here? But the criming standards, and it gets really complicated with criming standards and charging standards, they're all very different. And they might have sought advice as to whether it should have been crimed, albeit do we no crime it afterwards if no crime has been committed. That, in my view, would be your complaint against the police, is are you actually an offender in a crime? And I would say, in my experience, and you know, I could be wrong, because like I say, I'm not an expert in that area, but my view would be, I don't think a crime has been committed there.
neither do I.
I think you've got that civil case potentially with Tesco's, and also with the Royal Mint. If the Royal Mint are saying you can use this, you know, and use it for all these different things, and then you can't, then, you know, potentially, you know, you've got a useless chunk of metal there that they charge you £100 for. So, you know, it might be worth following that up with the Royal Mint as well.
Yeah, they're impossible to get through because basically whenever you speak to them, you just speak to some, you know, some person on who's got access to the website, and all he or she'll do is answer things that have already been written on the website. And what they're doing is they're avoiding answering the question. So all they'll say is things like shops and banks don't have to accept these, right? But they don't say, well, what about if you owe them money? Do they have to accept it then? So if you took a taxi ride, or if you had a meal and then you had to pay after the event, and then you offered to pay with that coin, well, I think that that's the intention of legal tender. It's monies that can't be refused if you're owed it, and you can't be prosecuted for non-payment if you've offered to pay it.
I think if I was in your position, I might be looking at small claims.
What, with the police?
No. You won't get nothing out of the police. The police has nothing to do with that civil side of, you know, you've got a whole load of coins that you cannot use.
Well, it's a protest, to be fair. It's a lawful protest, which I think is quite an intelligent, interesting one. You know, the country's kind of like in a state of ruin, I think, down to banking crisis.
Your issue with the legal tender or not, and how you can use these coins, isn't anything to do with the police. Well, your issue with the police is with regards to being treated as an offender in a crime. You've got two very, very separate things here. I wouldn't waste your time going down any route over the legal tender thing with the police, because the police don't deal with that. And all they'll say is that's your issue with the Royal Mint or with whoever the retailer is that's refusing to accept the coin.
Yeah, but don't you think it? I think it was an unlawful arrest. I've been told by various people that arrest should be a last option. If you can't establish my identity, well, you know, I had my driving license, and the officer knew who I was. You know, I'm planning to pursue civil action against him for unlawful arrest. To be fair, he was quite a nice guy. You know?
I mean, you've got various things that Code G of Pace will tell you what necessity there needs to be for us to arrest you. Okay, now, not being there at the time, I can't tell you what the necessity of the arrest is. So, you know, it would be unfair for me to comment on the actions of the other officer.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
If you look up the Code G of Pace, that tells you what the necessities would have been. And when he put you into custody, he would have had to have given that Code G or that necessity for arrest to the custody sergeant. The custody sergeant then has to say, yeah, okay, I agree with that, and I'm going to authorise that detention. Again, not being
I can't remember what it was exactly, but I know there was a bit of a dishonesty to it in my view, which is that he said I'm arresting him to establish his identity, when he never asked me what my identity was, and also he knew who I was because he looked at my registration plate and said, oh, you've done this before, you've been in trouble with the police over this before, haven't you? And I said, well, I haven't been in trouble. I said, but what was the outcome? He said, no further action. And I said, well, why is that then? And he said, well, I haven't got time to look into that. I said, but you have got time to arrest me. And he said, yes. So I believe the arrest was just used as a form of punishment because I didn't kind of submit to his authority in some ultimatum that I either pay in some other way or fill out their no means to pay form when I did have means to pay, or I'll get arrested.
Yeah, it's like I say, without actually being there at the time, it's really difficult for me to comment on what happened there.
I don't expect you to. That's fair enough.
What I would suggest is, if you want to raise a complaint against that officer or against what happened. With regards to the police action, then you're more than entitled to do that, and you can do that through the website. There's a complaint thing where it says write a complaint all over the website. Yeah,
I've already complained about it, and I've spoken to an investigator at the crime commissioner. Is that right?
No, it'd be professional standards.
Yeah, I've gone through the complaint.
PCC, I wouldn't have thought it'd be PSD.
I spoke to the crime commissioner, an investigator for the crime commission.